Oh, hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Kelly Berger podcast. I'm the Kelly Berger who brought this thing into existence. And today we're on episode number 21, which is it's going to feel like a real power hour. We're podcast is at the legal drinking age now. And today we're with a Minneapolis comic powerhouse, Robert Baril.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for
being here, Robert.
known sober comic Robert Baril. Happy to be here for your 21st.
Yep. Yeah, and for those of you who know Robert Burrell, he's very well known for his political comedy, and I just have to ask right off the bat, like, how are you handling this year, Robert?
Well, it's been a lot to try to keep up with. As much as I can adapt it to my act, I am. Biding stepping down was created a pretty big hole in my act that Trump's assassin filled with a bullet, grazing the ear, and that I'm able to get some jokes out of that. But yeah, I mean it's part of it too is just kind of seeing what works and what's going to have a bit of a shelf life after the next, whatever 3 months until the election. So depending on what the angle is, any great joke that I write about it is going to seem old after 3 months. So I'm trying not to devote a ton of time into coming up with bits for it, but at the same time, I also feel like if if in the case, yeah, like to think that I'm relatively known enough, at least in the Twin Cities, where people that are coming to Acme. That when does this come out?
In 2 or 3 weeks or whenever I have the time to put
Oh,
it out.
okay, gotcha. Well, if that's the case, then you've missed your chance to see me. But if you did see me, the week that I'm working there is to kind of like test a lot of this stuff. And I feel like people that do come kind of expect political comedy, topical comedy, and so if anything, it's more just the joke writing muscle of just trying to pull anything funny from the news, and then ideally it'll be something that'll stay relevant after 3 months, so I can continue to do it. But if it's
Mhm.
just something I put out and burn, then so be it. But yeah, you definitely can't say it's boring. Um, and so it's been a fun challenge to try to find unique takes, especially now when anybody can post jokes on Twitter and stuff
Mhm.
like that, hot takes on what's happening, and to try to find a sustainable bit with a bit of an original twist on it definitely takes a bit of work. And so
Yeah.
that's my specialty. So that's what I'm doing. But yeah, I don't even know if that got close to answering your question, but I think I'm handling it pretty well.
Yeah. I just wanted to talk about like the current year, like especially like this year politically, like every new week there's like a new major story just coming on, and I know a lot of people
Yeah,
like to say political comedy is sort of like an easy out because the jokes are fresh, but I think it's sort of like you have to keep on your creative muscle. Like it's sort of like you're being like a comedy Burning Man.
yeah. Well, I don't know about that. I definitely think it takes a fair amount of skill, especially if you're playing different kinds of rooms made up of different demographics of people. So to talk politics and do it in liberal Haven, Minneapolis, in front of all of those lefties, but then to take those jokes and go to rural Wisconsin or where have you, where they're probably much more inclined to think the 2020 election was stolen and still do well with that material, I think takes a fair amount of skill. So I mean, like anything else, I think you can half-ass it, and there's a lot of half-ass political comedy where it's just
Mhm.
jokes about Trump's hair or something, where it's okay, but I don't. In my book, that doesn't make you a political comic. It just make you kind of want to seem topical without having the skills or wanting to put in the time to do it effectively.
Yep. I also wanted to ask you like how you do political comedy in small towns. You just go. Do you start your act with like something not relatable to the crowd, or you just go right into it?
I mean, that depends on just reading the room and stuff and whoever went up before me and how they're doing. If there's something I can riff on, I try to do that. Rarely do I just open directly with politics, unless I know it's my audience or they're there to see me and they know my stuff. So then I feel like I don't have to establish myself. But yeah, you definitely, assuming not everybody there knows who you are, you want to build up a bit of a rapport first, before delving into that stuff.
Right.
Hmm.
Yep. And how did you discover like your act for political humor? Did you start off doing like observational stuff, or was it just right away?
Well, I think part of it was I'd always looked up to political guys like Bill Maher, Dennis Miller, Jon Stewart, and stuff. And so coming out of the gate, I would write a lot of stuff that I think was more so for them or just the only kind of style I knew versus writing for myself, my personal experience. And I think that's the case with a lot of comics. I forget who said it, but they basically said your first 3 years of doing stand-up, you're basically writing for the comedians you love or the comedians that most influence you. And then as you keep going, you kind of find your own voice and learn how to write more so for yourself. And so I think initially it was still like biting, probably much more Dennis Millery than
Mhm.
I like to think that it is now. But yeah, that was always an area that I wanted to talk about, and sort of how I learned to format jokes and stuff was through that like setup punch style. And now I think I do more uh bits basically, or like a funny political idea that I then expound on and stuff versus just kind of like headline jokes. But um, yeah, I mean, I think the big evolution for me was in trying to develop a funny, likable stage persona aside from the joke. So I wouldn't just be up there as like this, automaton joke machine, but like there's clearly a personality and a point of view behind it doing the joke. So even if the jokes don't do well, if they're new jokes or whatever, and it's kind of clunky, I can still be entertaining and funny despite how well those particular jokes do.
Yep. I'm glad you brought up like adding a personality to political jokes, because we've seen so many comics go political and they sort of become like an NPC or like autonomous or robotic.
Hmm. Yeah, I for one, it if it's not your style,
Mhm.
I think audiences can kind of tell too when comics are out of their comfort zones. If it's a subject matter or a style that they're not accustomed to, I think the audience can sense that and sort of pull back a little bit, not necessarily because they don't think you can pull it off, but there is, if a comedian's confident on stage, they can get away with so much more. And even if the jokes aren't funny, they can get people to laugh because
Yep.
of the charisma or whatever. But even the most talented comic, if they're unsure of themselves, unsure of the wording, if they're not used to doing rants and they're doing a rant, or they're not used to set up punch, they're doing set up punch. And there's just this kind of like the audience can pick up on that.
Mhm.
And then I think it kind of shifts from just kicking back and enjoying what you're going to say to almost like, oh, I hope they get through this. And that's a different mindset. And that's a mindset that's not ready to laugh. It's a mindset of just kind of hoping you pull off whatever, dumb shit you're saying.
Yep. Like the mood you have on stage is contagious to the audience. Like if
Yeah, well, not necessarily the mood, because I think like Lewis Black is very cranky, and you'll see
Yep.
comics that have off-putting moods. But I think it's the comfortability of the performer within that mood or style that will set them at ease. Whereas, because I mean, we've all been to open mics where you see people that are brand new, and even if what they're saying is funny, it's still just kind of like the baby deer learning to walk. And I think the audience is more like, oh, I hope he doesn't shit his pants, or I hope he, versus like, okay, let's just, kick back and hear what he says. And if it's funny, great. And if not, whatever. But, I think it's so to say, getting back to the political thing, I think if it's something that's out of the comics comfort zone,
Mhm.
it's already not, you're I don't know. It's definitely something that comics should practice if it's something they want to take on as being more political. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm glad you brought up Lewis Black, because he does a great thing of like being angry, but still like angry like when you're with your friend, like that
Mhm.
release a rant.
Yeah.
It's just something
Yeah.
that's so rare among men.
Yeah. I mean, and only certain people I feel like can get away with being angry. Like any performer, I think it's important to be aware of how the audience sees you, because that's going to be different than how you see you. Because you know what your thoughts are, how you're like, your characteristics and stuff. But the audience has their own perception. They didn't grow up with you, they don't know you, they just see the person that is on stage. And so if the jokes you're telling or your style or your personality don't gel with the perception that they have of you, then there's going to be a disconnect and you're not going to be able to do as well. And so somebody like Lewis Black can get away with being angry on stage because he's older, he's crankier. But if you took somebody like Anthony Jeselnik, who's younger, more attractive, edgier, and he was just shouting the whole time, it would be a huge turnoff because you'd be like, I don't, why is this guy so angry? He's got everything. Like this doesn't make any sense. So I think you also have to figure out through open mics and stuff like that, how the audience sees you, and then try to shape that into the persona, stage character, through line for the jokes of your performance. Because if you're continuously swimming against how they see you, I mean, maybe you just get so good that they just, eventually are like, okay, this is, like a Mitch Hedberg thing. Like Mitch didn't change. He just kept going and eventually audiences picked up on it. But that's, I think he's definitely an outlier in that. And so the audience, through what they're laughing at or how they're laughing or whatever, will kind of let you know whether or not they or any other audience is going to like, okay, we'll go with you on this. Like it makes sense that you're angry, or it makes sense that you have trouble not eating, or like whatever the shtick is. If it fits with what they're seeing, it's going to be a lot more successful.
Yeah, and it does take a long time to discover like your on stage persona. Like, for example, like Mitch Hedberg, you could feel his personality, even though he was doing like basic observational one-liners. You could tell you
Mhm.
feel like his personality versus like another one-liner like Stephen Wright.
Yeah, I mean, they're both very mellow one-liner guys. I think Hedberg is definitely more of kind of like the out there sort of hippie, like maybe he's not high, but you get the sense that he's high.
Mhm.
Whereas Stephen Wright is more like this oddball, just like cerebral, because he's very smart, but just kind of yeah, just a different cat. But again, it works for him too because he's not dressed in a suit or anything like that. He just kind of looks like somebody weird who would have these thoughts. And so when he says, like, I like to tease my plants, I water them with ice cubes, you're like, well, he does look like a weirdo that might water. So yeah.
Let's see, Robert, did you see like an uptick in political comedy like after or before Trump got elected?
Um, I mean, I not an uptick in good political comedy. I guess more people tried to do it, but yeah, I don't know. I think it takes a special kind of mind or whatever to take issues like, and not to say that um not just anybody can do it, but I think it is something that requires a lot of practice at, because I mean, I guess it depends on how you define it, but like yes, cheap shots at Trump doing whatever, I guess could count. But what I view it as is like taking an issue, an idea, whatever, sort of breaking it down, um, trying to make fun of both sides with it. Because it's not, I mean, if you're up there and you're just shitting on Trump the whole time or Biden the whole time, I think it's also you can do it, but I think it demonstrates um maybe not a laziness, but I think it it would be indicative of a more thorough performance or demonstrate your versatility as a writer if you're able to take shots at everybody. And I think the audience respects that more too. So
Mhm.
I would say there was probably an uptick in people trying to joke about politics, but probably not from a place of experience or comfortability. And so maybe they just had one joke about Trump that they do, and that's yeah, whatever. It mixes the act up. I think anytime like I'm trying to do like some more ranty stuff and to talk about just weird personal hangups and things in my act now, I mean, I'm always going to do the political stuff. I think that's sort of like my Hotel California to if I was the Eagles, I'd be Hotel let's say Don Henley, because I think he's the last alive one out of all the Eagles. But like that would be my hotel. Like people that come to see that's in my bio, political comic. I feel like I'd be a phony if I didn't do at least 10, 12 minutes on news, politics, whatever. But like anything else, I'm trying to expand a little bit and talk about different things and maybe just some news stories and stuff like that. So I do get the desire to try to mix things up a little bit. And if political comedy isn't your jam, I think it's a fun little exercise to try. But I would also encourage people to look beneath that first joke and try to find a way to make fun of both sides while you do it. Because if you can, then that's a bit that you can take anywhere and not just a
Mhm.
liberal room or a conservative room.
Right. And I think one of the things I've learned, lessons I've learned watching comedy over the years is like it's like one of the mistakes a lot of people make is like to encourage or like cheer for one side. Like I think people go to watch comedy so to be a comic be like an attack dog.
Yeah, that can happen. It happened a little bit my show 2 weeks ago where people just started shouting out people they wanted me to make fun of. They're like, do a Kamala joke or like do a whatever. And it's like, all right, well, hang on. This is so depending on how drunk or rowdy a crowd is, you definitely because that's something it's something people take very seriously, especially around election time, is politics. And so it's something too where you do need to be aware of kind of opening a Pandora's box a little bit, depending on what you're talking about or how you're talking about it, because these are important beliefs that people have. And so it's just like being I mean, again, odds are like they're not going to like throw beer cans at you like that one gal that went viral or something like that, but you are taking a bit more of a risk than you would
Mm-hmm.
say talking about your parents or your cat or jerking off breaks instead of smoke breaks, like whatever the bit is where people are going to like if they don't think it's funny, it's whatever they don't. But if it's political, you are kind of going on a bit of a ledge, and that's a rush for me. I enjoy doing that, but I people that are attempting it for the first time need to be aware that you instead of just not finding it funny, they might start to actively dislike you depending on again your personality, how you're saying it, the angle and stuff. It's a lot of new variables that go into it once your subject matter becomes something potentially controversial or you're making fun of their deeply held beliefs.
Yep. And are you delivering the jokes as like a person who's like a friend or like a spokesman?
Sorry, say that again.
Like it's especially takes a while to learn like how to deliver like political jokes like as like you being a friend on stage versus being like a political spokesman.
Well, yeah, you don't want to seem like soapboxy and I've got the right answers. And if you think this, you're an idiot. At least the way I try to do it. And I forget who gave me the advice. It might have been Psy. I don't know. But the advice was basically especially like having the subject matter that I do, the informed current event stuff if I were to, this gets back to the audience perception of you. So if I wore a suit on stage, I think I would just seem way too prickish. I think I would just see like this is a douchebag. Even if we agree with him, like he seems like kind of an uppity prick. But if I just wear a jean jacket, if I whatever, and I kind of man of the people it,
Mhm.
then it's almost like, okay, well, now I'm not this the East Coast prick that's looking down on middle America or whatever, I'm more like the Colin Quinn thing of just like an every guy who follows the news and has some takes on it. And that works much better for me. Because when I first started off, I did wear some suit jackets, I think, and I had okay sets. But I think once I ditched those, my sets are to go a lot better because of that. I think part of it is just how the audience perceives you. And for me, it was too much doing that.
Yep. And speaking, do you have any good like heckle stories from your political stuff, like in small towns or in clubs that would we be surprised about?
Not really. Sorry, this would be a part for a really exciting story. And I don't, I don't really have, I think part of it also is my style is very, it's not heckler friendly. I don't do a lot of rhetorical questions. I'm pretty rapid fire with my delivery. So I kind of tee myself up and then I just start taking swings. And I think, especially when I start non-political, but get kind of ranty and dark comedy and stuff. And then I think that a lot of audiences will self-regulate a little bit. There's been times where it'll be like a drunk lady, and then I just do a slight dig or something. But I've learned though, it can
Yeah.
be it's a unique challenge for me with hecklers because I can go from having the audience with me and being their champion on stage to being like a kind of mean prick pretty quickly, depending on if I attack a little too hard or if I whatever. And I think that's part of like the visual, like I'm tall, dark features. I already kind of look like a villain if I got some facial hair and stuff. And so I have to make sure that what my response is to the heckler is not an overreaction to what the heckler's doing.
Mhm.
And so at least the first two or three times I'll try to be like, I got this. Like, don't worry, this is trying to be like, and then I think the audience picks up on that as like a please don't make me do this. Like I don't, like Bruce Banner. Like please, I don't want him to come out either. Like let's
Right.
just yeah. But so then usually after two or three times, then the audience is almost like, okay, just stick it to this bitch. And then, then I'll make fun of her or do something too. But um no real no real terrible heckle experiences. Well, maybe. So okay, this is a few years ago at Camp Bar. I
Okay.
was opening for my buddy Steve Gillespie, and I my set was fine. This was like New Year's Eve, and I get to the very end of my set, and I do a bit about Jesus, and I hadn't even started. I just mentioned it was about Jesus, and it's not an anti-Jesus bit. It's the bits like Jesus with kids, how he'd go crazy if he had a kid of his own. And I just mentioned Jesus,
Mhm.
and then this guy in the back said something, heckled something, whatever. And so then I told him, here's a New Year's resolution, kill yourself. And then I just got off stage. And then Tommy Bear, I remember, was emceeing, and he came back out and he's like, Robert Baril, like just kind of let it because there was nothing you could say. So I mean, not
Right.
my most clever line, but I did get kind of annoyed that I already announced I was going to be done soon. This is the last bit. I've clearly established myself as someone who's good at this. So just give me the benefit of the doubt. And then that's the kind of thing where, because even after saying it, I was like, well, that was probably a little extreme telling that guy to kill himself. But, it is what it is. And I do think it's important to maintain a level of, I don't know if I want to say dominance on stage, but certainly control where you can't, even if you're not super quick with comebacks and stuff, you still have to be the one in control of the situation to keep the audience comfortable. Because if they sense that it's getting bigger than you and then it's almost, pretty hard to get the train back on the tracks. So that's why I told that guy to kill himself.
Yep. And do you also feel like being older helps with political comedy?
You son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. Uh, uh maybe. I
Because I
think
picture
you
like when people hear like a college kid talking politics on stage, they just get the feeling like he has no idea what he's talking about.
yeah, that's a good point. I think the important thing is to avoid being because there already is a Lewis Black and the George Carlin. And so I think it depends on your character. But even then, there's been a lot of like, you know, kids these days, which there's ways that you can make it kind of fresh and new, I suppose, but it is a tired idea. But so like with the political stuff, like, well, kids with their phones and whatever, that's kind of all right if there's a way you can make it fresh and stuff. I do think as far as the audience's perception of a political comic goes, I do think that's a keen observation. I do think that yes, I agree. If you're I'm going to be polite and say middle-aged looking like myself, that they like I once I'm on stage and I start going, it is very believable that I'm someone that is paying attention to the news, that thinks of these things, that does this stuff. But yes, I do think if you're a pretty young comic, I think but it could just be the way you talk about things. I think what my advice would be to, if you do want to talk about issues or politics, to try to find a way to make it as personal as possible and talk about yourself in relation to that issue. Because then, like, no audience can say that you're too young to know what's going on with you, right? Like if you got a bit on the deficit or what at foreign policy or something, and you're 23, then I mean maybe it's a great bit, and I can fuck my it's I can swear on this, right? This is a
Yep.
pod, yeah.
Just
I
not
mean,
too loud. I'm still in my parents' basement.
that's well, you can put the blame on me if they were like, Kelly, you said you're gonna fuck yourself a lot. Be like, no, that was my guess.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, again, all of this is grain of salt advice. I'm just talking from my perspective here in Saddam Spider Hole. But this is actually a Saddam brand T-shirt, by the way. This is
Ooh.
when you lose the empire. Yeah. Um, where was I going with this? Oh, if you're younger, yeah, try to make it about you as much as possible because you're an expert in you. And then like the parents insurance thing, or try to find whatever the issue is, try to find a way, an analogy or something to make it about you, because then the audience is going to go along with it more than, yes, if you act like you know what to do about Russia or whatever.
Right. Yep. And I also want to ask about the album you did with Brian Miller, the 2020.
Oh, you're the first person to ask me about that album. And for Brian and I don't even ask each other about that album. It's out there though. It is I'm proud of it. What do you want to know?
Let's see how you guys decided to do an album together. And
I'm gonna take credit. That was my idea. Because part of it is just, and this kind of gets to the nature of what I was talking about earlier with topical comedy. And the problem is that if you have a really good joke about something that's in the news, it's great, but in a year or two, depending on how specific it is, if it's an angle on something, like if it's a pro-choice bit or whatever, and it's good, you can almost do it anytime because abortion's not going away. Literally, it is going away in half the states, but the issue itself isn't
yep.
going anywhere. And so that you has to, but if it's about a specific person or a specific news story or something like that, the unfortunate thing is that it's no longer relevant. So with Brian and I, it was a kind of fun way of being like 2020 was another year where there was just a ton of news and historical events happening. And so we're like, well, let's just both do half an album of this topical stuff and put it together and sell that back when you could sell CDs for merch. And yeah, it was fun. It was sort of like our own little crash and burn. Tim Slagle's Week at Acme, where he has headliners work on new material throughout the week, and then people can come see the process. And then at the very end, they on Saturday they can see the developed bits, or as developed as they were able to get after the week. And so that was Brian and I's way of doing something similar. And it's not, I don't know how many people have listened to it or anything, but I do like the idea of at any point I can go back and sort of listen to that as like a nice little memento for where he and I were at that time and where the jokes were and what they were and stuff. So it's a fun little memory.
Yep. And how much of the album was based on what happened locally in Minneapolis after the George Floyd protests?
How much? I think I was the only. I'd have to go back and listen, honestly. I think I might have had one or two bits about it. And then my other album, Not the Time, my solo album from that period. Well, I think that was 2021 when that came out. I think the first maybe 8 to 10 minutes is
Mhm.
kind of about that and cops and stuff like that, which I took a lot of I think it's some of my best material that I've ever written because it ripped from the headlines and it was still fresh and I was able to joke about it in a way where I got most people on board with it. And I think that was a level of like, oh, I can really do this shit. Like I knew I could before, but that stuff I was like, oh god damn, okay, I'm gonna toot my own horn right now, but I'm really proud of that stuff.
Yep. And it was also an incident and material that was close to home.
Yeah, it was close to home. It was definitely So yeah, I think for a number of reasons that material is special to me, and if people want to hear it, they can get my album Not the Time on iTunes, I think. I don't know, Spotify maybe.
Yep, I still remember that summer. Like it's my biggest heart attack during the whole thing was just watching the news instead of just walking around and getting involved in. Remember shake hairs?
I do. Yep. Yeah, I went there once or twice, I think, to collect some stuff. She had some comics helping her out with that. Yeah.
Mm.
Man, that was hard to believe that was 4 years ago now.
I know it just went by so fast, and yet I remember that year just going by so slow.
Yep. Yeah. The year itself took forever, but since then although now this year's taken forever too, with the assassination attempt and now Biden stepping down, and we're having another one of those. Maybe I should get Brian together and we'll do a 2024.
Yeah, it's called 2022.
Mm. Well, no, well, yeah, I suppose. Well, I don't know. We'll come up with
2020, the
something.
sequel.
Yeah. Yeah, 2020 part two. Or just keep calling it 2020 just to confuse people and make sure no one buys it.
Yeah, and yeah, this year it's been I've been sort of stuck at home. I'm took like a hiatus from comedy, and boy, what a time to take a hiatus from comedy. But luckily, I'm not much of a political guy.
Well, are you still writing and stuff, or are you just
Yep,
not doing? Oh, okay.
I go to my work every day and I write there, and luckily I do a lot of good writing. I'm working like a good physical job, like
Hmm.
especially when I worked as a mover and when I work in various warehouses. I just never can write well just sitting still.
Oh, really? You can't sit still for it? You have to move around?
Yeah, it just gets the juices flowing. So
Oh,
usually I have to take
interesting.
a
Okay.
walk or work like
Hmm.
a really hard physical job.
But like the actual writing, you can sit
Yep.
down and think the process. Oh, so you just mean like to think of ideas you need to move around?
Yep.
Okay.
Sort of like walking around catching Pokemon.
Sure.
Sure, hopefully you
Sure.
got that reference.
Do you yeah, I got it. Do you deliberately try to think of material, or are you more of I'll just write it down when it occurs to me, and then
Yep.
once I have that down, just like go on walks and think about it and stuff? Or how do
Yep.
you what's your process?
I have a little notebook with me. I write I the idea for it down, then I go to a notepad, then write down like 10 premise points, and then type it out and then adjust it. It's like
Nice.
a whole bunch of phases like in a factory lineup, like okay, this is the part where we add like the paint on the car and then we ship it out.
So at what point in the revisioning do you bring it to the stage? How thorough is the process before you'll even consider performing it in front of people?
Let's see, it's usually like 4 stages, but I keep the ideas on file in case because lately now that I've been spending so much time by myself and not he much says I've been going through the notepad saying like, oh, this was a good idea I had like 3 years ago. I'll try to bring that back up.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have like
Okay.
it organized just so I can go back to it.
Sure. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of process of elimination stuff. I mean, I think the more you do it, the more you're aware of, I guess, how fast time goes during the set. So I've had to get a
Mhm.
lot better at and this was I've always admired Gabe Noah for this, is I would watch him go up at House of Comedy with brand new stuff and and he wouldn't do this every time, but sometimes he would bomb he's a very funny comic, but like it's new stuff, you're not sure. So he would go up and just bomb for like 7 minutes, but he would do all new stuff. And I think it's a hard thing to do as a comic, especially if the open mic is hot and everybody's doing well, to not do the material you know is going to work, because even though you keep the momentum going, your set's done and you've learned nothing. Like, well, I knew those jokes were going to work, so you kind of feel like you cheated yourself a little bit. And so when it comes to doing as much new material as possible, I still kind of struggle sometimes with wanting to open with a bit that works or close with a bit that works. And because I do that, then I'm sacrificing time. So then I'm not getting to the full new bits, new tags, whatever. And so that's something that's kind of My task for myself is trying to get better at just going up and doing all new stuff and just getting used to the fact that I'm probably not going to close strong or open strong. I mean, if I do, that's great, but I don't know how this stuff is going to go over. But I can get to all that stuff because that's the worst thing of you have this bit and there's 6 or 7 jokes or tags, but because of time you get to 2 of them, and then the next time you get to maybe 3 of them, then it's been like 4 shows and you're like, I don't even know if this stuff is funny or not, where it's like
Yep.
just do all of that. Yeah.
And this is why I want to go back to like a major hub like Austin, New York, and LA, where you can hit like so many mics in like even one night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely the more you can perform the better, especially if it's something new, because then you can find out pretty quickly whether or not anything's there.
Yep. And
Or if it's
performing
worth,
having it in your muscle memory.
yeah, having it in your muscle memory, but then also if it's worth the time and effort to revive it or try to figure it out or shape it into something,
Yep.
whether
Let's
it's
see.
worth committing to muscle memory. Yeah. Because it's, do you have any of those bits? Because I do have some where I know the idea is funny and I just can't figure out how to execute. So it just stays in a notebook, and every so often I'm like, how about this? And then nothing, like, well, okay. And I won't get rid of it completely, but just through the course. And then there's other bits where you're like, this is stupid. And then you go
Yep.
out and it murders, and you're like, well, I guess this is what I say now. But it is frustrating because there are, I think part of that is just sort of out premising your writing, where you have like a really good, the idea is there, the idea is very funny, but then it's just a matter of how to um convert that idea into what you're trying to say, and then say it in a way that people are going to understand why. So like the bit for me is, and it's admittedly dark, but it's a bit about how some people will commit suicide at people, or to like usually like the example is just like the guy is like, if you leave me I'm going to kill myself because he loves her, and he if he can't be with her he doesn't want to be alive or whatever. And the joke is like, but you're never fully aware of how much the other person loves you, right? Like your relationship exists in your head. It exists in their head, but it's a different person. It's a different combination, different mixture. So while you could be thinking like this is love, they could be thinking like this guy is kind of creeping me out right now.
Mhm.
And so to commit suicide like that is just going all in, and you're not even fully. And so then I do like this acting of like this guy that's like, I can't have you, that's it. And then he kills himself. And then he's like gonna go haunt her, and he's like, I can't wait to be there when she finds out all the sadness, all the, yeah, you're gonna have to live with that the rest of your life, bitch. Like, take. And then he sees her like get the text from whatever, the friend who's just like, hey, did you hear Peter killed himself? And she's like, and sets it, and then just goes on about. And now poor ghost of Peter is like, what the fuck? I thought, and now he's just a ghost forever. And to me, that's a really funny idea, but I have just been not been able to find a way in like 3 years to articulate that on stage in a way where it gets the laughter, I think. And maybe I never will, but it's also
Yep.
good to have challenges and stuff. And like in the same way that I think some people, political comedy might be a challenge for them. And maybe it's a challenge for me because it is kind of a flight of fancy, and so much of my comedy is just like a blunt, sarcastic, caustic, telling it like it is thing. And so maybe to transition from that to like a hypothetical, like dark Norm Macdonald-y fantasy of whatever might be a little too much of a stretch, but
Yep.
it's still fun to try. And I don't I it but that I think it is good to take those out every once in a while and just play with them a little bit, because sometimes it does click, and you are able to make a joke premise or a joke from a few years ago work because you've been performing since then, and oh, okay, I make the other person say that, here's what I say, I flip this. And almost like fixing a car a little bit, where you're just like, oh, it's the radiator. And then I mean, I wouldn't know what to do with a radiator, but like a mechanic
Right.
would, but it's like a joke mechanic where you can figure out how to retool it and stuff.
Yep. And Yeah, like how you talked about joke mechanics, like comics like so subjective, like everyone has their own. Well, I like to compare like joke writing to like serving food, like everyone has their different taste.
Sure.
Like some
Hmm.
people like spicy food, some people like vegan, non-offensive food, and there's some people who just plain like eating shit.
Yep, that's true. And some comics that do as well if they're not trying to get better or anything. But yeah, I would say the important thing though is to know where that line is between an audience that doesn't get it versus an audience that gets it, but you're just like angry or lazy or whatever as a writer or performer. So like, and the example I kind of use on both sides, but like the left of like not wanting to step on any toes or anything. So they go up there and a lot of their stuff is just like, right, guys, or like white man, am I right? And then like that's not a joke. That's not a punchline. And so to get off and be like, well, that crowd was kind of like that was a good crowd. You just didn't say a joke. And then conversely on the right,
Right? They
where it's
just
just like, hey, what the fuck? I can't say dyke, you bitches, and then it's almost like, well, that's also
yep.
not, you didn't say a joke. They're not a woke crowd. You just didn't say anything funny. There wasn't a joke there. You talked about how you couldn't talk about things. Like they pay to see someone talk. You can talk about it,
Mhm.
right? Just say it. Because then it's almost like it's worse than saying nothing because you are saying something. And what you're saying is that you can't say something. Like that is ridiculous to me. Like just say it or be clever enough to say what you want to say in a different way,
Mhm.
couch it with something, an analogy, a comparison, have someone else say the thing you want to say, and then you like the Matt Rife thing. I think I've had like 9 cups of coffee. The Matt Rife thing, where he when he got flack for the domestic violence joke in his special, the waitress, the black eye, that like dude, your audience is women, right? And it's like, okay, even if you want to do this joke about her getting punched, whatever, you make the friend say that awful line. You make fun of the friend. You're the hero in it. You still got to say the line. You're the one say like. There's so many ways around this. Like, just put a little bit of thought into your bits, people, and you can get an audience for the most part within reason. Not all of them, but you can at least get some of the audience to come on board with you enough to get you momentum to the next joke. But I think it's so easy to, at least for comics on like the right or like the
Yep.
anti-woke, to just be like, that's a woke crowd. And you're like, you didn't you there
Yeah, you
weren't
didn't.
jokes there. You just you said slurs. Like that's not a joke.
Yeah, like some people want to be an offensive comic, and then they complain about when people get offended.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not going to win them over by just saying more and more foul stuff without a point or irony or anything like that.
Yep. I also read this good book I'm trying to apply to my comedy called Verbal Judo. It's written by George Thompson. He's a former cop.
Okay.
He just talks about like verbal text like to avoid conversation like between on the streets like between criminals.
Wait a second. This is a cop that's and the book's called
Verbal Judo, I got it right here.
Verbal Judo. Well, I guess as far as cops go, I mean, I guess
Yeah.
that's the best kind of brutality is verbal. All right, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
He talked about when he wrote his book. He also talked about like in '91 he was like 1 week away from delivering like a talk on like how to handle like verbal conversation. And 1 week before the guys who arrested, let's see, it was I forgot the guy's name. It was
91, the Oklahoma City bomber? No,
no,
that
it
was
was
probably like
the
90.
Ryan in Los Angeles. It was he was going to talk to the cops who arrested the guy who I forgot the guy's name. It wasn't George Floyd. It was
Well, yeah, 91 I Green River Killer? Was it Gary Ridgway?
no, it was. I know the guy has the same name as like a famous like wrestler promoter.
All right, let's do this. Is this like a true crime thing? Because I'm a pretty good true crime guy. This
I'm
could be
gonna
a fun
Google up so
little
I can stop embarrassing myself.
don't no give me clues. Let's try to do this together, Kelly. Let's no, stay with me here. Let's try to land
Here,
this plane. Don't you fucking Google this.
all
Give
right.
me a clue. What do you know about him? Did you just look it up?
Well, I'm thinking like the '91 riots in Los Angeles. It was
Oh, Rodney King.
yes,
See, right there. We don't need to look it up. All I needed was some sort of event to base this off of. Yes,
Yep, the
Rodney
cop
King.
was the guy who wrote this book. He was 1 week away from doing like a seminar with the cops who arrested Rodney King before he. So they went out and arrested him
Well,
before he
he
did his.
definitely, yeah, he definitely got there too late.
Yep,
That was more than verbal judo that they used on Rodney. Yeah.
yep. And I really wish I had this book before I went down to Willie's.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, like there's a
So
lot
what
of
have you
heckle
learned?
stories from that place.
What have you learned from the cop judo book, the verbal judo?
Well, look, like how I like handle conversation, like how to stay cool when someone's hot.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, keep the temperature down. Sure.
Yep.
Do you have you asked me, did you have any heckler do you have any heckler stories? Has any
Well, the one night where that lady threw her drink in my face at Willie's, I remember that one.
Oh, okay. What was the bit? What give me some context for
Well,
this.
then that night I was doing my set on stage, and this one lady, a Coon Rapids local, who was walking in the
Sure.
front, she was staggering around. She tried to exit outside when those tables were blocking, like that front part of that stage.
Mm-hmm.
Like remember how that stage was, and I just said to her like, "Sorry, ma'am, there's no way to get out that way, just like your drug problems."
Oh, yeah, that's a good. And then she threw your drink at you?
Yep, she just gave me remember like the
Oh,
show
like a
Bleed?
splash. Okay, so it wasn't like she threw it was just like
No,
a
it's just she splashed like some I don't know if it was vodka or tequila, but I just remember that it burned my eyes.
okay. Well, yeah, that's probably vodka then. That's a good line, though.
Yep.
That's a good zinger. Yeah. Did people laugh?
Yep, I played with it, and then Corey Adam he walked on the stage and he handled it.
Okay. Yeah. That's I mean, so did she heckle you? Was she like interrupting your set with her trying to stumble out or
Yeah, she was trying to stumble on. She just heard like me making fun of her drug problem, and like she was also very high or on something, and just she had like the reactionary part of the brain, but everyone else was
sure.
laughing, having a good time. So
Okay. Was she like interrupting your set or anything? Was she
she yelled at some threats at me, but I just played it off because
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, because if she didn't do anything and she's just leaving, and then you're like, oh, you got a drug problem, bitch. Like that, I could definitely see why that would upset her enough to throw the vodka in your eyes. But if she was also shouting stuff first, then it's a matter of
yep.
self-defense, and that's okay. Just want to was that the only time that a drink has been thrown at you?
Yeah, that was the only time. And then I went down to Austin and I saw like a bunch of local comics. Like the one major criticism I have for people who are outside of Minneapolis is when they get heckled, they sort of go scorched earth too quickly.
Sure. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between a targeted drone strike at a particular audience member versus just carpet bombing the entire crowd. And yeah, to do it after like one bit, like you don't know what this crowd's like, or
Mhm.
maybe it's just like the last comic left a bad taste in their mouth or something. And so yeah, I do believe in the idea of giving the audience as it's formed that night a chance, a
Mhm.
bit or two. I mean, I will say there are some times where if it's like a buddy or a comic that you respect and they go up there and they're abused by the crowd, and then it's almost like a band of brothers thing where
Mhm.
like, all right, fuck you, I love that guy. This is going to be antagonistic now. So like I won't say that I haven't fell victim to thinking that a few times. But if it is just a matter of, they're just not a good crowd. They're not like mean or
Mhm.
antagonistic or anything. Yeah, just trying my best to win them over before having some sort of meltdown,
Right. Yep.
which is almost the worst, where I would almost rather them not like me
Mhm.
because then the like silence would make sense. Because in the Midwest, especially, it's a really frustrating feeling to go up there and just see people not laugh, but then afterwards, like, oh, that show was so great. And it's like, you didn't chuckle one time,
Yep.
asshole. Like, you could have expressed it. Like, think the show would have even been better had you given me something to play off of,
Right.
right? But just like this vacant stare, and like, how am I supposed to know
Right.
that you're in? So then,
That
it's
happens to me quite a bit. And one one friend of mine says she said advice he gave me said always act like you're killing because sometimes people will give you like a and you don't hear it. Like I've listened to recordings of myself and I'm like, maybe I should get my hearing checked because there was laughter and I didn't hear it.
yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is it is kind of a fine line as well, whether or not if the crowd is, I think part of that should just be like the subject matter. Like, if you're not talking about anything controversial and they're quiet, then like they probably still like you. They just might not be laughing or whatever. But yeah, because I kind of go back and forth with myself sometimes performing the, House of Comedy wherever, if it's not going as well. And then it's is it me or is it them sort of thing? Because I kind of feel the need to address it. Like if I'm up there for 5 minutes and I haven't gotten a really good laugh, then it's almost like I think I need to make fun of them. And I'll make fun of them playfully a little bit, or start to make fun of myself to try to build some momentum, to try to just get them to make any noise whatsoever. And then if you poke them enough times, then you can kind of tell whether or not it's they're enjoying it quietly or they don't like you, which again, that's information I can work with. If you don't like me, then I'm just going to do the stuff that makes me laugh and do dark shit and weird shit. I'm going to stop trying to please you, and daddy's going to get his. All right. Whatever bits that are half, thought up, whatever. This is just going to be a me set because you don't like me. But if there's a chance that I can win these people over, then I'll do other bits. I'll pivot. I'll try to, okay, if I think that they're attainable, but without knowing, yeah, it's quite the conundrum.
Yep. Well, we're almost near the end. The one thing I want to ask before we go, how does your experience as a substitute teacher, like how did that help you with your comedy or like
Yeah. How did I mean it's stage time in the front of the room. None of the kids were drunk, to my knowledge. But I do think it's sort of material wise, I got jokes out of it, but I think the biggest benefit I think is just sort of command of the room, essentially, because that's the biggest parallel, I think, just being in front of everybody and talking and being comfortable. And again, a lot of that stuff, it's not joke writing, it's not delivery, it's just being comfortable speaking in front of people, having all the eyes on you, and not being shy or hesitant. And obviously comics can still make that work for them. But I think just the all of the experience in public speaking, it's one less thing to have to worry about when you pivot to stand up, is because that part's done. And for a lot of people, that's the hardest part of it. They are funny, they can write, but it's just getting up in front of people and then looking at people look at you with their faces, which maybe they're eating, maybe they're angry, maybe they're whatever, to just kind of tune that out, or just be comfortable enough where if what I say is funny, great. If not, then I'll say something else. But like I have control of this, and it's going to be fine. So I would say that was the biggest benefit of the whole thing, in addition to the material and all that stuff, was just getting comfortable speaking in front of people in a room.
yep. And did you mostly substitute in like an elementary school or middle school? Or was it like a combination of all three?
All three. I didn't do any actual teaching beyond like fifth grade, because they can't expect anyone to show up on an hour's notice and teach chemistry or anything. So high school was just like, here's the packet. Don't fight or finger each other in the back of the room, and let me know if you're going to go to the bathroom. Like that's basically the high school. And then middle school is depending. I mean, a lot of it's still just like, okay, there's your, again, just glorified bathroom bouncer, or Remember the Titans DVD player guy. Yeah, and then elementary school, you actually do some teaching, and that's kind of fun because the kids are young enough where you're a guest teacher and they're excited to see you. They're excited in middle school, but that's because they know they can get away with shit. But again, it's also nice being the sub, because then you have plausible deniability. We're like, I don't know. So it's the rare job where you get to be the boss, but you know less than anyone about what's happened. I mean, I guess there's some bosses that are completely clueless and stuff too in their situations, but it's a fun because there would always be a few students that would try to get away with stuff, but then I'd have like the do good like teacher's pet students who would like deputize themselves and they'd be like, he's not allowed to do that. And they'd be like, shut up. And then it's like, well, thank you. I appreciate, so there'd always be at least one or two kids that would keep the others in line for me.
Nice. And yeah, there are a lot of good comics who started out as teachers, and I do
Hmm.
see some parallels between like teaching and comedy. Like it's a noble profession that many people go into, but at the end of the day, like there's only like five or four people you actually remember.
Yeah, yeah,
And
you definitely got to love it. Much like comedy, I think you have to love doing it because if you don't, what are you doing? What are there's more lucrative jobs. There's jobs you'd have to put up with nearly as much shit. Like if it's not a passion, ditch it.
right.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yep, I think I covered everything I wanted to. We're 1 minute away from the 1 hour mark.
Oh, so we're just stretching. We're just stretching now for the sake of when does this come out? Theoretically.
Let's see, I got two more episodes I gotta release, and right now I'm
Okay.
still living in central Minnesota where I'm working full time at a warehouse. So
You
this
got
is
you
sort of
got
my
if
pet
you
project to keep myself sane.
if you're that's fair. I'm happy to be a part of maintaining your sanity. I appreciate you having me. For any of Kelly's listeners in Calgary, Alberta, I'll be there over New Year's Eve at the Comedy Cave. You can come check me out there. I'm just trying to promote stuff. Right, Robert Baril 2 on Twitter, Instagrandpa Comedy on Instagram, Robert Baril, Baril on Facebook, barilcomedy.com is the website. 6'2" is the height, 180 ish is the weight. Um, dark features. I don't know. We've probably filled a minute now, right?
Yeah, this might come out in like 3 weeks because I have two more episodes I gotta release.
Oh, who have you had on? Who else is who's in the queue?
Let's see, the one and they'll be released by this time, but the one I have to release is with Trent Lusek and Aiden McCluskey.
Oh, okay, nice,
Yeah,
nice, good company. All right, well, thanks for having me, Kelly.
thank you. I'm gonna find the record button.